The main memory I have is of a lot of people who I knew quite well thought it was far too much money to spend on a project like that. It was a big project, the idea of which was to bring scientists together to push the idea of a human genome project, which in the end did work. The famous Sidney Brenner going to speak to the head of the Medical Research Council, who do a lot of funding, and try and persuade them that this was something that they should support. I think the Human Genome Project stimulated a huge amount of development in the technology, and of course BGI have been involved in that. What it did is it made that technology available not only for humans, but for plants, animals and agriculture, and for evolutionary studies and comparative studies. If there hadn't been the Human Genome Project to do that, it's very unlikely that all this other application would have become possible. Well, I think that Huan Mingyang did in the early days, managing to bring China into the Human Genome Project, even if it was on a relatively small scale by modern standards, I think was extremely important, and that was through the founding essentially of BGI. And I think that gave an entry for China for its own benefit, but to a fair extent in the end for the benefit of others, of being heavily involved in the whole affair connected with human genomes. And I think that was a very important contribution, and I think it remains. So I think nowadays there's almost no research in any aspect of biology that doesn't somehow benefit from the development of the Human Genome Project. And of course BGI have done a lot of work on sequencing other species and so on. And that's very important because we can learn a lot by species comparison. There's a huge amount that's been done in finding genes for rare diseases, whether it's HLA and mapping it and knowing where the genes are and what you can do with them, whether it's the immunotherapy that I'm involved in and making antibodies in a way that you can do. All of that technology in a way was pushed by the development of the Human Genome Project. Essentially, all the understanding of biology in any species goes back to its genomic content. That's what can tell us what happens. So understanding what goes on, you've got to know what's there, how it's used, and as I mentioned in my talk, how do you understand the fact that a single gene, a sperm with an egg, fuses from the father and the mother, and from that one single gene, you and I are made, with lots of different cell types, lots of different things, different colours of hair, different ways of everything. We still don't understand all of that. There's still a lot of work to be done there to really understand that, because that's only beginning. So there's a lot to come from that. It wouldn't have come if it wasn't from all the information that comes from the Genome Project.